The gown was borrowed, the invitation was stolen, and her presence here felt like a cruel joke. Her boss, Marcus Tellman, had made his intentions crystal clear: charm the mysterious tech mogul, secure the investment, or find herself unemployed by morning. "You're perfect for this," Marcus had said, his eyes cold as winter steel. Young, beautiful, desperate enough to do whatever it takes. The words still stung. Desperate. Was that what she had become? A paralegal drowning in student loans, living paycheck to paycheck, reduced to being bait in her boss's predatory schemes? The ballroom buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. Diamond necklaces caught the light from crystal chandeliers, and men in $1,000 suits discussed million-dollar deals. Nerea felt like an imposter in this world of inherited wealth and corporate power. Her target was supposed to be Kyle Americ, the enigmatic CEO of Americ Technologies. She'd studied his photo: sharp jawline, storm gray eyes, the kind of devastating handsomeness that belonged on magazine covers. But in person, he was nowhere to be found. "Champagne, miss?" A waiter appeared beside her, offering a silver tray. "Thank you," she whispered, accepting the glass with trembling hands. The bubbles tickled her nose, but the alcohol did little to calm her racing heart. 20 minutes passed, 30, an hour. Still no sign of Kyle Emmerich. Marcus's text messages grew increasingly aggressive. "Where is he? Find him. Now, don't you dare disappoint me, Nerea. Remember what's at stake here." The pressure was suffocating. Nerea's chest tightened, and suddenly the ballroom felt too small, too crowded, too loud. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to escape. Clutching her purse, she slipped away from the main event, her heels clicking against marble floors as she wandered through the hotel's luxurious corridors. The noise faded behind her, replaced by blessed silence. She found herself in a quiet alcove overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Lucent City's twinkling lights stretched out like fallen stars. The rain had intensified, creating rivers of light on the glass. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The voice came from the shadows, deep, rich, with a hint of weariness that matched her own. Nerea spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. A man stepped into the soft light. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a midnight black tuxedo that fit him like it was crafted by angels. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. But it was his eyes that stole her breath. Storm gray, intense, holding depths of pain and longing that called to something deep within her soul. "I'm sorry," she stammered, backing toward the window. "I didn't know anyone else was here. I can leave. Please don't." His voice was gentle now, almost pleading. "I came here to escape the circus too. Seems we had the same idea." "The circus?" A bitter smile played at his lips. "The performance, the pretending, the endless parade of people who want something from you but never see who you really are." Nerea's breath caught. This stranger had just voiced the exact feeling she'd carried for years. "You understand? More than you know." He stepped closer and she caught the scent of his cologne, cedar and rain, and something uniquely masculine that made her pulse quicken. "I'm Kale." Her world tilted. This was him. This was the man she was supposed to manipulate, to use, to betray. But looking into his eyes, she saw no arrogant billionaire, no corporate shark. She saw a man as lost and lonely as she was. "Nerea," she whispered. Beautiful name for a beautiful woman. His gaze swept over her face with reverent appreciation. "Though you look like you'd rather be anywhere else in the world, wouldn't you?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. "If you were only here because someone else was pulling your strings." Something flickered in his expression, understanding, recognition, a shared pain that needed no explanation. "Every damn day," he said quietly. "Board members, investors, family members who see dollar signs instead of a human being. Sometimes I wonder if anyone would notice if I just disappeared." "They would notice," Nerea said, surprising herself with her certainty. "Maybe not for the right reasons, but they would notice." "And what about you?" His voice had grown softer, more intimate. "Would you notice if I disappeared?" The question hung between them like a prayer, like a promise, like the first note of a song that would change everything. She couldn't finish the sentence, because the truth was terrifying. This man, this stranger she'd met 5 minutes ago, had already carved a space in her heart that she didn't understand. Thunder rumbled overhead, and lightning illuminated the sky. In that brief electric moment, Kale's hand found hers. "Dance with me," he said. There's no music. There's always music if you know how to listen. And somehow, impossibly, she could hear it. The rhythm of their heartbeats, the whisper of rain against glass, the symphony of two souls recognizing each other across the void. They moved together in perfect harmony, her hand in his arm around her waist, swaying to a melody only they could hear. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no gala, no pressure, no expectations. Just this moment, this man, this feeling that she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing it. I should go, she whispered against his chest, but she made no move to leave. So should I. His arms tightened around her. But I don't want. This is crazy. We just met. Sometimes the best things in life are crazy. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with breathtaking tenderness. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind hasn't figured out yet. When he leaned down, when his lips met hers, it was like coming home and falling off a cliff simultaneously. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, questioning, then deeper, hungrier, full of all the longing they'd both been carrying. Hours passed, like minutes. They talked about everything and nothing. Childhood dreams, favorite books, the way the rain sounded different in various cities. He told her about the pressure of running a company at 32, about feeling like a prisoner in his own success. She shared her struggles, her fears, her dreams of a life where she mattered beyond her usefulness to others. I have a penthouse suite upstairs, he said, when the storm grew fierce. We could wait out the weather. The invitation hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Every rational thought screamed at her to leave, to run, to protect herself. But her heart whispered something else entirely. Okay, she breathed. The suite was magnificent, all glass and steel and modern luxury. But Nuria barely noticed the decor. She was drowning in Kyle's eyes, in the way he looked at her like she was something precious, something worth protecting. Are you sure? He asked, his hands gentle on her shoulders. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, she replied, and meant it. What happened next transcended physical attraction. It was a connection of souls, a recognition that went beyond the surface. In his arms, Nuria felt beautiful, cherished, whole. For the first time in her life, she wasn't being used or manipulated. She was being loved. When she fell asleep in his arms, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, she believed in fairy tales again. But fairy tales, she would soon learn, don't always have happy endings. Dawn broke cruel and empty in the penthouse suite. Nuria stirred in silk sheets that smelled of cedar and promises, her body still humming from a night that had rewritten her understanding of love. But the space beside her was cold, vacant, holding only the ghost of warmth where Kyle had been. She sat up slowly, her heart already sinking. On the nightstand lay a single white rose and a small velvet box. Inside the box nestled a delicate silver ring with a sapphire that matched her eyes, and a note written in elegant script. Emergency board meeting. Had to leave. This ring is a promise. I will find you. Wait for me. K. But waiting felt like drowning. Nuria dressed quickly, her hands shaking as she slipped the ring onto her finger. The hotel staff looked at her with knowing smiles as she fled through the lobby, her borrowed dress now feeling like a costume from someone else's life. The morning air was crisp, washed clean by the storm, but inside her chest, panic bloomed like a dark flower. She didn't even know his last name. How could she wait for a man she couldn't contact? How could she trust a promise from someone who existed in a world so far above her own? 3 weeks later, staring at the pregnancy test in her tiny apartment bathroom, Nuria understood that some promises were meant to be broken by fate itself. The plus sign stared back at her, bold and undeniable. One night, one perfect, impossible night had created a life inside her. But when she went to the doctor, when she heard the rapid flutter of not one but 3 heartbeats, her world exploded into beautiful chaos. Triplets, Dr. Martinez said with a warm smile. 3 healthy babies. Congratulations, Miss Voss. Nuria touched her still flat stomach, overwhelmed by wonder and terror in equal measure. 3 babies. 3 lives depending on her. 3 children who would grow up asking about their father, a man she knew only as Kyle, who existed now like a beautiful dream she couldn't quite remember. That night, she made the hardest decision of her life. She packed everything she owned into 2 suitcases, withdrew her savings, and bought a bus ticket to Millbrook, a small town 300 miles away where nobody knew her name or her story. The journey was long and lonely. Other passengers dozed or read books while Nuria stared out rain-streaked windows, one hand protectively curved over her belly. She'd left no forwarding address, no trail to follow. Marcus had fired her the day after the gala anyway, calling her a worthless failure when she couldn't produce Kyle's signature on investment papers. Millbrook welcomed her with autumn colors and the scent of apple orchards. She rented a studio apartment above Mrs. Chen's bakery, paying 6 months in advance with the last of her savings. The space was tiny but clean, with a window overlooking the town square and morning sunlight that painted everything gold. "You're running from something," Mrs. Chen observed on her first day, handing her a warm cinnamon roll. "But you're running towards something too." Neria's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. 3 somethings, actually. Mrs. Chen's eyes crinkled with understanding. Ah, the most important job in the world then. Finding work proved challenging. Neria's law degree felt useless in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business. But she found part-time work at Chapter and Verse, the local bookstore, and took cleaning jobs at the medical center after hours. The work was hard, the pay was minimal, but it was honest. As her pregnancy progressed, she fell in love with the quiet rhythms of small-town life. The bookstore customers became friends, asking about her health and bringing homemade soup when she looked tired. Dr. Patterson, the town's only obstetrician, refused to let her pay full price for appointments. "Community takes care of community," he said gruffly. "Those babies will be Millbrook babies soon enough." But the nights were the hardest. Alone in her small apartment, Nerea would hold Kyle's ring to the light and remember the way he'd looked at her, like she was something precious, something worth protecting. She wondered if he'd tried to find her, if he'd returned to the hotel looking for the woman who'd vanished like smoke. The babies were active, constantly moving and shifting. During ultrasounds, Dr. Patterson would chuckle at their antics. "They're communicating already," he told her during her 7th month. "See how they're positioned? They're holding hands." Nerea cried right there on the examination table, overwhelmed by the miracle growing inside her. These weren't just babies, they were a family, complete and perfect even without their father. Labor came 3 weeks early on a snowy February morning. Nerea had been shelving books when the first contraction hit her like lightning. Mrs. Chen drove her to the hospital, holding her hand through every wave of pain. "You're stronger than you know," Mrs. Chen whispered as they wheeled her into delivery. "These babies chose you for a reason." The delivery was long and exhausting, but when she finally held her 3 sons, everything else faded away. They were identical, perfect, each weighing just over 5 pounds. But it was their eyes that stopped her heart, storm gray, intense, exactly like their father's. "What are their names?" the nurse asked, clipboard ready. Nerea looked at each tiny face, seeing Kale's features reflected back at her. "Cassian," she said, touching the first baby's cheek. "Kaio," she continued, kissing the second baby's forehead. "And Caleb," she finished, cradling the third close to her heart. The early months were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings. Nerea learned to function on 3 hours of sleep, to change diapers with one hand while holding a bottle with the other. Her savings dwindled to nothing, but somehow she managed. The community rallied around her, bringing meals, babysitting during her work hours, treating her sons like they belonged to everyone. As the boys grew, their personalities emerged. Cassian was the protector, always watching over his brothers with serious gray eyes. Kaio was the explorer, crawling faster than his brothers and getting into everything. Caleb was the charmer, smiling at everyone and melting hearts wherever they went. But they all shared their father's intelligence. By age 2, they were speaking incomplete sentences. By 3, they were reading simple books. By 4, they were asking questions that broke Neria's heart. "Mommy, why don't we have a daddy?" Caleb asked one evening as she tucked them into the single bed they all shared. Neria's throat tightened. "Because sometimes families are different, sweetheart. Some families have mommies and daddies, some have just mommies, some have just daddies. But Tommy has a daddy who takes him fishing," Cassian said seriously. "And Jake's daddy teaches him baseball." "I can teach you baseball," Nerea said, though she'd never held a bat in her life. "It's not the same," Kaio whispered. "We want a daddy who looks like us." The words cut deep because Nerea wanted that too. She wanted Kyle to see his sons, to know the incredible little people they were becoming. But she'd made her choice that morning in the hotel suite, and now she had to live with it. "Listen to me," she said, gathering all 3 boys in her arms. "You are my greatest gifts. You are smart, kind, brave, and beautiful. Any daddy would be lucky to have you as sons. But do we have a daddy somewhere?" Caleb persisted. "Yes," Nerea said honestly. "Somewhere out there you have a daddy who who doesn't know about you yet. Will we ever meet him?" Cassian asked. Nerea kissed each of their foreheads. "I don't know, baby, but I promise you this. You will never, ever lack for love, because I got 3 sons instead of 1 man, and that's the greatest win of my life." The boys seemed satisfied with that answer, but Nerea lay awake long after they fell asleep, staring at the ceiling and wondering if she'd made the right choice. By the time the boys turned 4, Nerea had established a routine that worked. She managed the bookstore during the day while they attended the local preschool then, cleaned offices at night after tucking them into bed. Mrs. Chen or one of the other neighbors always stayed with them, part of the informal network of love that had formed around their small family. Money was always tight. Nerea wore the same 3 outfits to work, mended holes in the boys' clothes instead of buying new ones, and chose between paying the electric bill or buying groceries more often than she cared to admit. But she never let them see her struggle. "We're rich in love," she would tell them when they asked why they couldn't have the toys their friends had. And that's the most important kind of wealth. The boys were remarkably understanding for their age. They never complained about their second-hand clothes or their small apartment. Instead, they helped with chores, shared everything equally, and protected each other with fierce loyalty. One evening, as she watched them play with blocks on the floor, building an elaborate castle together, Nerea felt a fierce surge of pride. She had done this. She had raised 3 incredible children on her own, given them love and stability despite every obstacle. "Mommy," Caleb said, looking up from their construction project, "you're the best mommy in the whole world." "Yeah," Kaio agreed. "Even if we're poor, we're happy." "We're not poor," Cassian corrected seriously. "We have each other. That makes us rich." Nerea's eyes filled with tears. These boys, her boys, understood love in a way that adults often forgot. They didn't need expensive toys or fancy clothes. They needed each other, and they needed her. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. 4 years. 4 years of searching, of hiring private investigators, of scanning every crowd for a face that haunted his dreams. Kyle Emmerich had built an empire, expanded his technology company across 3 continents, and become one of the most powerful men in the world. But none of it mattered when he couldn't find the woman who had vanished from his life like morning mist. The hotel security footage had been useless. She'd kept her face turned away from cameras, moved through blind spots with unconscious grace. The guest registry showed no one matching her description. Even the most expensive private investigators had come up empty-handed. "She's a ghost, Mr. Emmerich," Detective Morrison had said during their final meeting. "No credit card records, no social media presence, no digital footprint. Either she's using a false identity, or she's completely off the grid." Kyle had refused to give up. He'd commissioned artists to recreate her face from his memories, distributed the drawings to hotels and restaurants across the city. He'd donated millions to charities, hoping she might attend another gala. He'd even started a foundation for single mothers, thinking she might need help if she'd been in trouble that night. Nothing worked. The ring he'd left for her remained unclaimed at the hotel. The white rose had withered and died, just like his hopes seemed to do a little more each day. But he couldn't stop searching. She had become part of his DNA, woven into his very existence. Every woman he met was measured against the memory of storm-gray eyes and gentle hands, and every one fell short. His assistant, David, had grown concerned. "Sir, perhaps it's time to consider that she doesn't want to be found." "She took the ring," Kyle had replied quietly. "She wouldn't have taken it if she didn't want to see me again." But as months turned to years, doubt crept in. Maybe she had been like all the others, interested only in his wealth and status. Maybe their connection had been one-sided, a product of his desperate loneliness rather than genuine emotion. Still, he searched. The idea for the Tech Academy had come from his memories of her. She'd spoken passionately about education, about giving underprivileged children opportunities to rise above their circumstances. So he'd built it, a state-of-the-art facility in downtown Millbrook, 3 hours from Lucent City, where children from low-income families could learn coding, robotics, and digital design. The grand opening was supposed to be a quiet affair, but his PR team had insisted on making it a media event. Local news stations, parent groups, and community leaders were all invited to tour the facility and meet the students. Kyle arrived early, wanting to avoid the crowds and cameras. He preferred the quiet moments before events, when he could walk through the empty halls and remember why he'd built this place. The academy was beautiful, all glass and steel and natural light, with colorful murals painted by local artists and state-of-the-art equipment that would give these children access to the same resources as the wealthiest private schools. The first families began arriving at 9 o'clock. Kyle positioned himself in the main lobby, shaking hands with parents and listening to their stories. These were working-class families, teachers, nurses, mechanics, small business owners, all trying to give their children better futures. "Mr. Emmerich, this is incredible," said Maria Santos, a single mother with twin daughters. "My girls have been talking about nothing else for weeks. They want to be video game designers when they grow up. Then we'll make sure they have the tools to do it," Kyle replied, genuinely pleased. This was what success should feel like. Not the cold calculations of board meetings, but the warm satisfaction of making a real difference. The morning progressed smoothly. Children ran excitedly from station to station, their faces lighting up as they programmed simple robots and created digital artwork. Their joy was infectious, and for the first time in months, Kyle felt something approaching happiness. He was signing a donation check for the Academy Scholarship Fund when chaos erupted in the lobby. 3 boys burst through the entrance doors, moving like a small tornado of energy and excitement. They were identical, same height, same build, same unruly dark hair that refused to be tamed. But it was their faces that stopped Kyle's heart. Sharp jawlines, dimpled chins, and eyes, storm gray eyes that were mirror images of his own. "Oh my God," he whispered, the pen falling from his numb fingers. The boys were laughing, chasing each other around the lobby furniture with the fearless abandon of 4-year-olds. One of them, the one with slightly longer hair, spotted the robot display and let out a whoop of joy. Robots. Cassian, Kyle, look. Real robots. They converged on the display like bees to honey, their small hands pressed against the glass case. Kyle watched in stunned silence as they pointed and whispered to each other, their heads tilted at identical angles, the same way he tilted his head when he was thinking. "Boys, boys, come back here." The voice cut through Kyle's shock like a blade through silk. He turned toward the entrance, and time stopped. She was there. His angel, his ghost, his obsession made flesh. 4 years had only made her more beautiful, her dark hair longer now, her face more mature but still glowing with the same inner light that had captivated him that stormy night. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a sweater that had seen better days, but to Kyle, she was more radiant than any woman in designer gowns. "I'm so sorry," she said breathlessly, hurrying toward the boys. They get excited when they see technology. "Cassian, Kaio, Caleb, come away from there. We need to wait in line with everyone else." She hadn't seen him yet. Her attention was focused entirely on the children, his children, he realized with a shock that nearly brought him to his knees. The timing was perfect. 4 years ago, one night, and now 3 boys who looked exactly like him at that age. "It's quite all right," he managed, his voice rough with emotion. "They're welcome to look." She glanced up at the sound of his voice, and their eyes met across the crowded lobby. The color drained from her face, and she took an involuntary step backward. "Kyle?" she whispered. "Hello, Naraya." The boys, oblivious to the drama unfolding around them, continued their excited chatter about the robots. But Kyle couldn't look away from her face, the shock, the fear, the unmistakable love that flickered in her eyes before she could hide it. "Mommy, can we touch the robots?" one of the boys asked, tugging on her sweater. "Not right now, Caleb," she said, her voice shaking. We should go." "But we just got here," protested another boy, Cassian, if Kyle had heard correctly. "You promised we could see everything." "Yeah, Mommy," added the third boy, Kaio. "You said this would be fun." Kyle watched this interaction with growing amazement. These children, his children, were polite, articulate, clearly intelligent, and they adored their mother, clustering around her like she was their entire world. "They're beautiful, Naraya," he said quietly. "All 3 of them." Her eyes filled with tears. "Kyle, I can explain." "Mommy, who's this man?" Cassian asked, stepping protectively in front of his brothers. Despite his small size, there was something regal about his posture, something that reminded Kyle of himself at that age. This is Mr. Emmerich," Naria said carefully. "He built this academy." "Cool," Kyle exclaimed. "Are you like super smart?" Despite everything, Kyle found himself smiling. "I try to be. Are you?" "We're the smartest kids in our class," Caleb said proudly. "Mommy says we get it from our daddy." The words hit Kyle like a physical blow. These boys, his boys, had been wondering about him, asking about him. They had no idea that their father was standing right in front of them. "Your daddy must be a very smart man," Kyle said, his voice thick with emotion. We don't know, Cassian said matter-of-factly. We've never met him. But Mommy says he's out there somewhere. Naraya's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Boys, why don't you go look at the programming station? I need to talk to Mr. Emmerich for a minute. The boys hesitated, clearly sensing the tension between the adults. But their curiosity about the academy won out, and they wandered toward the computer displays, still chattering excitedly among themselves. They don't know, Kyle said. It wasn't a question. How could they? Naraya replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't even know your last name, but you knew where to find me. You could have… What? Showed up at your office with 3 babies and claimed they were yours? What kind of reception do you think that would have gotten me? Kyle wanted to argue, to tell her he would have welcomed her with open arms, but he understood her fear. In her position, pregnant and alone, she had made the choice that felt safest. Why didn't you wait for me that morning? He asked instead. You were gone. I woke up alone, and I panicked. I thought maybe you regretted what happened, or that you were married, or… She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. I had an emergency board meeting, a hostile takeover attempt. I had to leave, but I never wanted to abandon you. I left you that ring as a promise. She pulled a chain from beneath her sweater, and there it was, the sapphire ring he'd left her, hanging close to her heart. I never took it off, she admitted. A gust of wind from the opening doors swept through the lobby, and Naraya's hair shifted away from her neck. There, just below her left ear, was the small birthmark he traced with his finger that night, a crescent moon shape that had driven him wild with desire. All the breath left his lungs. It was really her. After 4 years of searching, of dreaming, of nearly giving up hope, she was here, and she had brought him the most precious gift imaginable. Daddy? The small voice made them both turn. Caleb stood a few feet away, his storm-gray eyes moving between Kyle and Naraya, with the uncanny perception that children sometimes possess. Are you our daddy? He asked simply. Kyle looked at Naraya, seeing his own emotions reflected in her face, love, fear, hope, and desperate longing all tangled together. She gave him the tiniest nod, and he knelt down to Caleb's level. Yes, he said, his voice breaking. I'm your daddy. Caleb studied his face for a long moment, then broke into a radiant smile. I knew it. You smell like us. What do you mean? Kyle asked, laughing despite the tears threatening to fall. Mommy says everyone has a special smell, and families smell the same. You smell like home. And then, without warning, Caleb launched himself into Kyle's arms, holding him tight with the fierce love that only children can give. Kyle held him back, overwhelmed by the rightness of it, by the way this little boy fit perfectly against his chest. Cassian, Kaio. Caleb called to his brothers. Come meet our daddy. The other 2 boys came running, their faces alight with joy and curiosity. Within moments, Kyle was surrounded by his sons, answering their rapid-fire questions and marveling at their intelligence, their humor, their incredible resemblance to him. He looked up at Naraya, who was watching the scene with tears streaming down her face. In that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that everything, the years of searching, the nights of loneliness, the endless wondering, had been worth it. He had found his family. Do you believe in fate? In the idea that some people are meant to find each other no matter how far apart they drift. Sometimes life separates us from the ones we love, but if the connection is real, if it's meant to be, the universe will always find a way to bring us back together. Share this if you believe that true love always finds a way home. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single story. The Academy tour continued in a blur of media interviews and ribbon cuttings, but Kyle's attention remained fixed on his family. He watched Naraya guide the boys through the exhibits, her protective instincts evident in every gesture. She kept glancing at him with a mixture of wonder and wariness, as if expecting him to disappear again. When the official event ended, Kyle found himself reluctant to let them leave. Would you like to see my private office? He asked the boys. I have some prototypes you might find interesting. Cassian, Kaio, and Caleb exchanged excited glances. Can we, Mommy? Caleb pleaded. Please. Naraya hesitated, clearly torn between protecting her children and allowing them this opportunity. We shouldn't impose on Mr. Emmerich's time. It's no imposition, Kyle said gently. I'd like to get to know them better. The boys spent an hour in his office, playing with holographic displays and voice-activated gadgets. They were remarkably intuitive with technology, grasping concepts that impressed even Kyle's adult engineers. But more than their intelligence, it was their personalities that captivated him. Cassian was the natural leader, organizing his brothers and ensuring everyone got equal turns with the equipment. Kyle was the innovator, immediately trying to modify and improve everything he touched. Caleb was the diplomat, smoothing over conflicts and making sure everyone felt included. "They're extraordinary," Kyle told Naraya as they watched the boys collaborate on building a virtual robot. "You've done an incredible job raising them." "They're good kids," she replied, but he could hear the pride in her voice. "They've never had much, but they've never complained. They take care of each other." "And who takes care of you?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "I don't need taking care of. I'm fine." But Kyle could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she unconsciously rubbed her lower back, the slight tremor in her hands from too much coffee and too little sleep. She was far from fine. When they finally left the academy, Kyle walked them to their bus stop. The boys chattered excitedly about everything they'd seen, already making plans to return. But as the bus approached, Caleb suddenly turned to Kyle. "Will we see you again?" he asked, his small face serious. Kyle looked at Naraya, silently asking permission. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes," he said, kneeling to Caleb's level. "I'd like that very much." "Good," Caleb said, throwing his arms around Kyle's neck. "I've been waiting my whole life to meet you." The words nearly shattered Kyle's composure. As the bus pulled away, he stood on the sidewalk watching until it disappeared around a corner, already planning his next move. The next morning, Kyle drove to Millbrook with a specific mission. He'd done his research the night before, learning everything he could about the small town where his family had been hiding. It didn't take long to locate Chapter and Verse, the bookstore where Naraya worked. The shop was quaint and cozy, with narrow aisles packed floor to ceiling with books. The scent of old paper and fresh coffee created a warm, inviting atmosphere. Kyle found Naraya behind the counter, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a faded cardigan that had been mended at the elbows. She looked up as he entered, her eyes widening in surprise. "Kyle, what are you doing here?" "I need a book," he said simply. "I hear you have the best recommendations in town." She stared at him for a long moment, then laughed despite herself. "You drove 3 hours to buy a book?" "I drove 3 hours to see you," he corrected. "The book is just an excuse." Color rose in her cheeks. "The boys are in school. If you're here to see them, I'm here to see you too, Naraya. We have a lot to talk about." She busied herself straightening already neat shelves. "I don't know what you want me to say. You've seen them now. You know they're yours. What happens next?" "That depends on you," Kyle said, moving closer. "What do you want to happen next?" Before she could answer, the bell above the door chimed, and Mrs. Chen entered carrying a plate of fresh pastries. She stopped short when she saw Kyle, her sharp eyes taking in his expensive clothes and confident bearing. "Well, well," she said, setting the plate on the counter. "This must be the mysterious man who's had our Naraya looking like she's seen a ghost." "Mrs. Chen," Naraya said quickly, "this is Kyle Emmerich. Kyle, this is Mrs. Chen. She owns the bakery downstairs." Mrs. Chen studied Kyle with the intensity of a hawk. "Emmerich. As in Emmerich Technologies, the man who built that fancy academy?" "Yes, ma'am," Kyle replied respectfully. "And you're here why, exactly?" Kyle glanced at Naraya, who was watching the interaction with barely concealed anxiety. "I'm here to get to know my family," he said simply. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Your family? Oh, my dear boy, you have no idea what you've walked into." Over the next hour, Mrs. Chen regaled Kyle with stories of Naraya's struggles as a single mother, the night she'd worked multiple jobs to pay rent, the times she'd skipped meals to ensure the boys had enough to eat, the way she'd put herself through hell to give them a good life. "She's a warrior," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "Those boys worship her because she's earned it. You want to be part of this family? You better prove you're worthy of her." When Mrs. Chen finally left, Naraya slumped against the counter, embarrassed. "I'm sorry about that. She's protective." "She loves you," Kyle said. "That's not something to apologize for." "I don't want your pity," Naraya said quietly. "We've managed fine without help. I can see that. But you don't have to manage alone anymore." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. "What do you want from us, Kyle?" "I want to be their father," he said without hesitation. "I want to be part of their lives, to help raise them, to give them opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. And I want—" "What?" "I want you," he said simply. I've wanted you since that first night, and seeing you with them, seeing the incredible woman you've become. I want us to be a family, a real family." Tears gathered in her eyes. "You don't understand. I'm not the same person I was that night. I'm tired, I'm broke, I'm barely keeping my head above water. You're this successful, powerful man, and I'm just—" "You're the mother of my children," Kyle interrupted. "You're the woman who took 3 babies and loved them so well they became these incredible little people. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Don't you dare diminish what you've accomplished." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the afternoon school bus. Through the window, Cale could see the boys climbing down, their backpacks bouncing as they ran toward the store. "Daddy," Caleb shouted as he burst through the door. "You came back." "I told you I would," Kyle said, catching him in a hug. "How was school?" "Boring," Kyle said, dumping his backpack on the counter. "But I finished my math homework during lunch. It was too easy." "Show off," Cassian said, but he was grinning. "Mr. Peterson says we're reading at a 7th grade level." "That's incredible," Kyle said, genuinely impressed. "You're all so smart." "Mommy says we get it from our daddy," Caleb said, studying Kyle's face. "You do look like us. Same eyes, same chin dimple, same stubborn streak," Noria added dryly. The boys quickly warmed up to Kyle's presence, showing him their schoolwork and chattering about their day. He was amazed by their vocabulary, their curiosity, their natural affection. They had clearly been well loved and well educated, despite their circumstances. "Can you stay for dinner?" Cassian asked. "Mommy makes the best spaghetti." "I don't want to impose," Kyle said, looking at Noria. "Please, Mommy," Kyle added. "We never have visitors." Noria looked at their eager faces and sighed. "I suppose I could make extra." Their apartment above the bakery was small but clean, filled with the boys' artwork and second-hand furniture that had been lovingly maintained. Kyle could see the careful way everything was arranged to maximize space, the way Noria had created a warm, loving home despite their limited resources. During dinner, the boys peppered Kyle with questions about his work, his childhood, his travels. He answered honestly, marveling at their intelligence and humor. They were remarkable children, and he felt a surge of fierce protectiveness toward them. After dinner, while Noria cleaned up, Cale helped the boys with their homework. They worked at a small table in the living room, heads bent over math problems and reading assignments. It felt natural, domestic, like something he'd been doing for years. "You're really good at this," Cassian observed, watching Kyle explain a particularly challenging math concept. "I like helping you learn," Kyle replied. "You're all so smart. It's fun to see how your minds work." "Mommy always helps us," Kyle said loyally. "She knows everything." "She does," Kyle agreed. "Your mother is an extraordinary woman." As the evening wore on, Kyle found himself falling more deeply in love with this little family. The boys were everything he could have hoped for in children: intelligent, kind, funny, and loyal. And Noria, watching her with them, seeing the gentle way she corrected their behavior, the pride in her eyes when they succeeded, the infinite patience she showed. She was magnificent. When it was time for bed, the boys insisted on showing Kale their bedroom, a small space they shared with 2 sets of bunk beds and a dresser. Their belongings were few but cherished, and Kyle noticed how they looked out for each other, making sure everyone had their favorite stuffed animal and that no one felt left out. "Will you read us a story?" Caleb asked, holding up a worn copy of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Kyle looked at Noria, who nodded with a small smile. "Go ahead, it's their favorite." He read 3 chapters, doing voices for the different characters and making the boys giggle with his dramatic interpretations. When he finally closed the book, they were drowsy and content. "Daddy," Caleb said sleepily, "will you come back tomorrow?" "If your mother says it's okay," Kyle replied, tucking the blanket around him. "She will," Cassian said confidently. "She's been sad for a long time, but she's not sad anymore." "How do you know?" "Because she's smiling with her eyes again," Kyle explained. "She only does that when she's really happy." After the boys were asleep, Kyle and Noria sat on the small couch, the weight of 4 years of separation hanging between them. "They're incredible," Kyle said softly. "You've done an amazing job raising them." "They're good kids," Noria replied. "They've been through a lot, but they've never lost their joy." "They miss having a father," Kyle observed. "But they don't resent you for it. They love you completely." "I've tried to be enough for them," she said quietly. "But I know it's not the same as having 2 parents." You are enough, Kyle said firmly. You're more than enough, but you don't have to do this alone anymore. I want to help. I want to be part of their lives, part of your life. Naraya looked at him with eyes full of hope and fear. This is all so overwhelming. 4 years ago you were a stranger. Now you're the father of my children, and I don't know how to process that. We'll figure it out together, Kyle said, taking her hand. We have time. She didn't pull away from his touch. The boys already love you. It's like they've been waiting for you their whole lives. I've been waiting for them too, Kyle admitted. Are all of you? That night we met, I knew something had changed. I just didn't know what. And now? Now I know, he said, bringing her hand to his lips. You gave me the greatest gift in the world. You gave me a family. The power of love to heal, to reunite, to create families from the most unexpected circumstances never ceases to amaze me. Have you ever experienced a moment when everything suddenly made sense? When the pieces of your life finally fell into place? Share your stories of second chances and new beginnings in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. The next evening, Kyle returned to Millbrook with a simple request. Have dinner with me. Just the two of us. Naraya had arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch the boys, though they'd protested loudly about missing time with their newly discovered father. We'll see him tomorrow, she'd promised, kissing each of their foreheads. Now she sat across from Kyle in the town's only upscale restaurant, feeling underdressed in her simple black dress, the same one she'd worn to parent-teacher conferences and the boys' school plays. But Kyle looked at her like she was wearing diamonds and silk. You're nervous, he observed, watching her fidget with her napkin. Wouldn't you be? She replied. The last time we had dinner together, I ended up pregnant with triplets. He laughed, the sound warm and rich. I was hoping for a different outcome tonight. Such as honest conversation. No more running away. The waiter brought their wine, and Kyle raised his glass. To second chances. To second chances, she echoed, though her hand trembled slightly. They ordered their meals in comfortable silence, but Naraya could feel the weight of unspoken questions between them. Finally, she couldn't hold back anymore. Why did you really leave that morning? She asked. And don't say it was just a board meeting. I've seen enough corporate dramas to know emergency meetings don't happen at 6 in the morning. Kyle set down his wine glass, his expression growing serious. My Uncle Richard was attempting a hostile takeover of the company. He'd been buying up shares in secret for months, using shell companies and offshore accounts. That morning, I got a call from my head of security, saying Richard had called an emergency board meeting, claiming I was mentally unfit to run the company due to erratic behavior. What erratic behavior? Donating too much to charity, refusing to lay off workers during a slow quarter, turning down profitable contracts with companies that had questionable ethics. He ran his hands through his hair. Richard saw my compassion as weakness. He'd been building a case that I was too soft, too emotional to lead a tech empire. Naraya leaned forward, genuinely concerned. What happened? I had to choose, Kyle said quietly. Leave you sleeping in that bed, or lose everything my father built. I thought I could handle the meeting quickly and be back before you woke up. I left you that ring as a promise, wrote you a note explaining everything. There was no note, Naraya said. Just the ring. Kyle's face went pale. What? When I woke up, there was only the ring and a white rose. No note, no explanation, just silence. That bastard, Kyle breathed. Richard must have had someone remove it. He knew I'd spent the night with someone. He probably had me followed. He would have seen removing that note as protection for the company's image. The revelation hit Naraya like a physical blow. You mean, you never meant to abandon me? Never, Kyle said fiercely. I was falling in love with you. I thought about you every second during that meeting. I fought tooth and nail to keep control of the company, not for the money or the power, but because I wanted to build something worthy of you. I wanted to be the kind of man you could be proud of. Tears spilled down Naraya's cheeks. I waited for 3 days. I called the hotel 20 times, asking if you'd left any messages. I even went back to the ballroom where we met, hoping you'd look for me there. I did look for you there, Kyle said, his voice breaking. I hired investigators, distributed your picture to every hotel in the city. I must have interviewed 100 women who vaguely resembled you. I never stopped searching, but I was already gone, Naraya whispered. By the time you started looking, I was on a bus to Millbrook with your babies growing inside me. They sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the cruel irony of their situation. So much pain, so much loneliness, all caused by the machinations of a man who saw love as a liability. Tell me about those early days, Kyle said gently. When you first found out about the pregnancy. Naraya took a shaky breath. I was terrified. I'd never been pregnant before, and suddenly I was carrying 3 babies. I had no family, no support system. My boss fired me the day after the gala because I couldn't deliver your signature on his investment papers. Marcus Tellman, Kyle said, his voice hard. I remember him, sleazy little man who kept trying to corner me at events. He was the one who forced me to go to that gala, Naraya admitted. He threatened to fire me if I didn't charm you into signing his deal. I felt like such a fraud, wearing that borrowed dress, pretending to belong in that world. You did belong, Kyle said firmly. You were the most real person there. Everyone else was performing, but you were just yourself, beautiful, honest, vulnerable. You took my breath away. I was falling apart, Naraya corrected. I was broke, scared, and completely out of my depth. I had no business being there. You had every right to be there. You had every right to love and be loved. Kyle reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm sorry you went through all of that alone. I'm sorry my uncle's greed cost us 4 years together. I'm not, Naraya said quietly. I mean, I wish things had been different, but I'm not sorry for the life I built. Those boys are everything to me. Raising them, watching them grow, seeing them become these incredible little people. It's been the greatest privilege of my life, even though it was so hard. Especially because it was hard, she replied. I learned I was stronger than I ever imagined. I learned I could do anything for them. I learned that love really can conquer all obstacles. Kyle squeezed her hand. You're remarkable. The way you've raised them, the values you've instilled in them. Naraya, they're perfect. They're kind, intelligent, compassionate, loyal. They protect each other. They share everything. They treat everyone with respect. That's all you. They're good kids, she said, though he could see the pride in her eyes. They've been through a lot, but they've never lost their joy. They still believe in magic, in happy endings, in the goodness of people. What about you? Kyle asked. Do you still believe in happy endings? She looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. I'm starting to. Their meals arrived, but neither of them had much appetite. They picked at their food, too absorbed in their conversation to focus on eating. What was it like? Kyle asked. Being pregnant with triplets? A smile played at Naraya's lips. Exhausting, wonderful, terrifying. I was sick for the first 4 months, then I got huge. By the end, I could barely walk. But feeling them move inside me, knowing they were healthy and strong, it was the most amazing experience of my life. I wish I'd been there, Kyle said softly. I wish I'd been there to hold your hand during labor, to see them take their first breaths, to help you through those first sleepless nights. So do I, Naraya admitted. There were so many moments when I desperately wanted to share the experience with someone. Their first words, their first steps, the first time they said, Mama. I took videos of everything, hoping someday I'd have someone to show them to. Show me, Kyle said immediately. I want to see everything. Naraya hesitated. It's hundreds of videos, hours and hours of footage. I have time, Kyle said. I have all the time in the world. After dinner, they walked slowly through Millbrook's quiet streets. The town was peaceful in the evening light, porch lights glowing warmly and the scent of honeysuckle drifting on the breeze. It was a far cry from the urban sophistication of Lucent City, but Kyle found himself charmed by its simplicity. This is a good place to raise children, he observed. It is, Naraya agreed. Everyone knows everyone, but in a good way. When I was struggling, the whole community rallied around us. Mrs. Chen brought soup when I was sick. Dr. Patterson reduced his fees. The boys' teachers gave them extra attention. We may not have much money, but we're rich in love and support. I can see that. The way Mrs. Chen looks at you, the way the boys' teachers spoke about them at the academy. You're family to these people. They saved us, Naraya said simply. I don't know what we would have done without them. They reached the bookstore, and Naraya unlocked the door. Would you like to come up? I can show you those videos. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of precious memories. Naraya had indeed documented everything. The boys' first smiles, their first attempts at crawling, their first words, all of which were Mama. Kyle watched with tears in his eyes as his sons learned to walk, learned to talk, learned to read. Look at this one, Naraya said, pulling up a video from the boys' 3rd birthday. They insisted on making their own cake. On the screen, 3 toddlers covered in flour and frosting were helping their mother bake. The kitchen was a disaster, but their laughter was infectious. Kyle could see how happy they were, how much they loved each other and their mother. They're so young, he marveled. But they already looked out for each other. Always, Naraya said. From the very beginning, they've been a team. If one of them was sick, the other two would bring him toys and water. If one of them was sad, the others would comfort him. They've never been jealous or competitive. They just love. They learned that from you, Kyle said. That kind of love, that loyalty, that selflessness. It's not innate, it's taught. And you taught them perfectly. I did my best, Naraya said. But there were so many times I felt like I was failing them. Times when I couldn't afford new shoes or school supplies. Times when I had to work late and miss their school plays. Times when they asked about their father and I didn't know what to say. What did you tell them? The truth, as much as I could. That they had a father who loved them but couldn't be with them. That family comes in all shapes and sizes. That being different doesn't make us less than. They never resented you for it? Never, Naraya said firmly. They're incredibly empathetic children. They understood, even when they were tiny, that I was doing my best. They've never asked for more than I could give. Kyle closed the laptop and turned to face her. Naraya, I want to be part of their lives. I want to be their father in every sense of the word. But I don't want to disrupt what you've built. I don't want to come in and change everything. What do you mean? I mean, I want to earn my place in this family. I want to prove that I'm worthy of your trust, of their love. I want to be the kind of father they deserve, the kind of partner you deserve. And if I said no? Naraya asked quietly. If I said I wasn't ready, that I needed more time, then I'd wait, Kyle said without hesitation. I'd wait as long as it took. I'd prove myself every day until you felt safe enough to let me in completely. Even if it took years? Especially if it took years. Naraya, I wasted 4 years searching for you. I'm not going to waste another minute trying to rush something that needs time to grow. She studied his face, looking for any sign of insincerity. But all she saw was love, patience, and genuine commitment. The boys already love you, she said. They've been waiting their whole lives for you. And you? Kyle asked. What have you been waiting for? She was quiet for a long moment, then reached up to touch his face. I've been waiting for you to come home. I'm home now, he said, covering her hand with his. If you'll have me. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared of trusting you, of believing this is real. I'm scared of the boys getting hurt if things don't work out. I'm scared too, Kyle said. I'm scared of not being good enough, of not knowing how to be a father, of disappointing you. But I'm more scared of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. So what do? We take it one day at a time, Kyle said. We build trust, we build love, we build a family, together. Naraya nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay. One day at a time. Okay, Kyle agreed, pulling her into his arms. One day at a time. As he held her close, feeling her heart beat against his chest, Kyle knew that he was exactly where he belonged. The past 4 years had been painful, but they had led him to this moment, to this woman, to this chance at forever. And he wasn't going to waste it. 3 weeks later, Kyle stood in the doorway of his Millbrook hotel suite, watching Naraya pack the last of the boys' belongings. The decision to move to Lucent City hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. The media had discovered his frequent trips to the small town, and photographers were starting to camp outside the bookstore. Are you sure about this? Naraya asked for the 10th time that morning. We could stay here, and you could visit on weekends. The boys need stability, Kyle replied gently. And frankly, so do you. You've been working yourself to death trying to support them. It's time to let someone help. Cassian looked up from the suitcase he was packing with meticulous care. I think it'll be fun living in the city. Will we have our own rooms? You'll each have your own room, Kyle confirmed. But I had the architect design connecting doors in case you want to stay together. We always stay together, Kyle said matter-of-factly. We're a team. The best team, Caleb added, carefully wrapping his favorite stuffed elephant in one of his shirts. Daddy, will there be other kids to play with? There's a park right across the street with a code playground, Kyle said. And the elementary school is supposed to be excellent. You'll make friends quickly. The boys had adapted to calling him Daddy with remarkable ease, as if the word had always been waiting on their tongues. But Kyle never took it for granted. Each time one of them reached for his hand or asked for his help, he felt a surge of overwhelming gratitude. The drive to Lucent City took 3 hours, with the boys pointing out every interesting landmark along the way. Kyle had arranged for a moving truck to transport their belongings, though there weren't many. Most of their possessions fit easily in the back of his SUV. Look at all the tall buildings. Caleb exclaimed as they entered the city limits. They're like giants. That one's shaped like a rocket ship, Kaio observed, pointing to one of the newer skyscrapers. I bet it has really cool elevators. Can we go to the top of one? Cassian asked. I want to see the whole city. We'll go to the observation deck of the Americ Tower, Kyle promised. You can see all the way to the ocean from there. You have a building named after you? Naraya asked, raising an eyebrow. My father built it, Kyle explained. It was his dream to create something that would last beyond his lifetime. The company headquarters are on the top 20 floors. The villa was located in an exclusive neighborhood, surrounded by manicured gardens and wrought iron gates. As they pulled into the circular driveway, Naraya's eyes widened at the sight of the sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion. This is where we're going to live, she asked quietly. If you like it, Kyle said, suddenly nervous. I know it's a big change from the apartment, but I wanted you to have space, privacy. Each of you has your own wing, but there are common areas where we can spend time together. The boys tumbled out of the car, their excited chatter echoing across the courtyard. They ran up the front steps, pressing their faces against the tall windows. It's like a castle, Caleb shouted. Are we princes now? You've always been princes, Naraya said, following them up the steps. This just gives you a castle to match. The interior was stunning. High ceilings, marble floors, and artwork that probably cost more than Naraya had made in years. But Kyle had been thoughtful in his preparations. The boys' wing was filled with books, games, and educational toys. There was a playroom with a climbing wall and reading nooks, and each bedroom was decorated in colors the boys had chosen during their video calls. I love it, Cassian said, running his hands over the built-in bookshelves in his room. It's like a library and a bedroom combined. Look at this, Kaio called from his room. There's a whole desk for inventions and experiments. Caleb's room featured a cozy reading corner with oversized pillows and a window seat overlooking the garden. I can read here every morning, he said contentedly. The light is perfect. Naraya's suite was elegant but warm, with a sitting area, a bedroom larger than her entire former apartment, and a bathroom that featured a soaking tub she'd only dreamed of. French doors opened onto a private terrace overlooking the city. It's beautiful, she said, though Kyle could hear the overwhelm in her voice. But it's too much. I can't accept all this. You're not accepting charity, Kyle said gently. You're accepting a home, our home. The boys deserve to have every opportunity, every advantage. And you deserve to rest, to stop worrying about money, to focus on being their mother instead of their sole provider. I've been taking care of myself for so long, Naraya said. I don't know how to let someone else do it. Then let me teach you, Kyle said, taking her hands. Let me show you what it feels like to be cherished, to be supported, to be loved the way you deserve. That evening, they celebrated their first night in the new house with takeout pizza and a movie in the massive home theater. The boys curled up on the leather recliners, their eyes wide as they watched the enormous screen. Naraya sat beside Kyle, slowly relaxing into the comfortable atmosphere. This is nice, she admitted. I can't remember the last time I watched a movie without worrying about the electric bill. You'll never have to worry about bills again, Kyle said. I want you to focus on the boys, on yourself, on what makes you happy. What makes me happy is seeing them happy, Naraya replied, watching as Caleb shared his popcorn with his brothers. They're everything to me. They're everything to me too, Kyle said. And so are you. The peace of their new domestic life lasted exactly 1 week. On Monday morning, as Kyle prepared to leave for an important board meeting, his head of security appeared at the breakfast table with a grim expression. Sir, we have a problem, Marcus said, setting down several newspapers and pulling up news websites on his tablet. The media knows about your family. The headlines were explosive. Billionaire's secret family exposed. Tech mogul's hidden triplets. The woman who disappeared with Americ's babies. Naraya's face went pale as she read the articles. The photographs were invasive. Shots of her leaving the villa, images of the boys playing in the garden, even pictures of their former apartment in Millbrook. How did they find out? She asked, her voice shaking. Someone leaked information about your move to the city, Marcus explained. We're investigating, but the damage is done. There are reporters camped outside the gates. The boys looked up from their cereal, sensing the tension. What's wrong? Cassian asked. Nothing for you to worry about, Kyle said quickly. Just some business stuff. But Naraya was spiraling. I can't do this, she said, standing abruptly. I can't have our lives exposed like this. The boys don't deserve to be spectacles. Naraya, wait, Kyle said, but she was already heading for the door. The next few days were a nightmare of speculation and gossip. Social media exploded with theories about their relationship, their past, their future. Some commentators praised Kyle for stepping up as a father, while others accused him of using his wealth to buy a ready-made family. The boys, thankfully, were too young to understand most of the coverage, but they sensed their mother's distress and began acting out, fighting with each other, refusing to eat, having nightmares. "I hate this," Naria said one evening, after spending an hour comforting Caleb through a panic attack. "They're just children. They didn't ask for this attention." "It will die down," Kyle assured her. "The media always moves on to the next story." But Naria wasn't convinced. "Maybe we should go back to Millbrook. Maybe this was a mistake." "Running away won't solve anything," Kyle said. "And I'm not going to let a bunch of reporters drive my family away." The opportunity to take control of the narrative came sooner than expected. The annual Tech Innovation Summit was scheduled for the following week, and Kyle was the keynote speaker. Originally, he'd planned to attend alone, but now he had a different idea. "Come with me," he said to Naria. "Bring the boys. Let's introduce them to the world on our terms." "Are you crazy?" Naria asked. "That's exactly what the media wants. More access, more photos, more gossip." "No," Kyle said firmly. "What they want is mystery, scandal, speculation. If we control the story, if we present ourselves as a united family, they'll have nothing left to sensationalize." "The boys aren't ready for that kind of exposure," Naria protested. "The boys are ready for anything," Kyle said. "They're strong, intelligent, articulate. They're my sons, and I'm proud of them. I want the world to know that." It took 3 days of persuasion, but Naria finally agreed. The boys, predictably, were excited about the prospect of seeing their father's work and meeting other inventors. The morning of the summit, Naria stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the elegant blue dress Kyle had bought her. It was beautiful, perfectly tailored, and probably cost more than she used to make in a month. "You look like a princess," Caleb said from the doorway, dressed in a miniature suit that made him look impossibly sophisticated. "You look like a queen," Cassian corrected, straightening his tie with the same precision he applied to everything. "Queens are better than princesses," Kaio added, bouncing on his toes. "Queens get to make the rules." "Then, I guess I better start practicing," Naria said, smoothing their hair and checking their appearance one final time. The summit was held at the city's most prestigious conference center, with hundreds of attendees from around the world. As their car pulled up to the red carpet, Naria felt her old anxiety return. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to Kale. "Yes, you can," he said, taking her hand. "You're not the scared woman who attended that charity gala 4 years ago. You're a mother, a survivor, a warrior. You've already proven you can handle anything." "We're right here with you, Mommy," Caleb said, slipping his small hand into hers. "We're a team, remember?" "The best team," his brothers echoed in unison. As they stepped out of the car, camera flashes exploded around them. The boys handled the attention with remarkable poise, staying close to their parents but smiling and waving at the crowd. Naria held her head high, drawing strength from their confidence. The summit proceeded smoothly until the afternoon keynote speech. Kyle had prepared remarks about the future of technology and innovation, but as he stood at the podium, he realized he had something more important to say. 4 years ago, he began, I thought success meant profit margins and market share. I thought leadership meant making hard decisions in isolation. I thought family was a luxury I couldn't afford." The audience was completely silent, hanging on his every word. "Then I met a woman who changed everything I thought I knew about strength, about love, about what really matters. She taught me that the greatest. Innovations aren't born in laboratories or boardrooms. They're born from love, from sacrifice, from the willingness to put someone else's needs before your own." In the audience, Naria felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Beside her, the boys sat up straighter, pride evident in their young faces. "That woman is here with me today," Kyle continued, "along with our 3 sons. They are my greatest achievement, my most important project, my most successful venture. And I wanted to share them with you because I believe that the future of technology, the future of everything, depends on the values we instill in our children." The applause was thunderous. But Kyle wasn't finished. "Naria Voss is an extraordinary woman who raised 3 extraordinary children under extraordinary circumstances. She is not my secret, she is not my shame, and she is not my mistake. She is my partner, my love, and my inspiration. And these 3 boys, Cassian, Kaio, and Caleb, they are not just my biological children. They are my heart, my future, and my greatest joy." The boys couldn't contain themselves any longer. They ran onto the stage, wrapping their arms around their father's legs. Kyle scooped them up, one at a time, kissing their foreheads as the audience erupted in cheers. "Come here," he said, reaching for Naraya. "All of you. This is our moment." As Naraya joined them on stage, as Kyle pulled her close and kissed her hand, she realized that this was their true beginning. Not the night they met, not the morning she left, not even the day they reunited, but this moment when they stood together as a family and claimed their place in the world. The euphoria of the tech summit lasted exactly 48 hours. Kyle was reviewing quarterly reports in his office when his assistant David knocked urgently on the door. "Sir, you need to see this," David said, his face pale as he handed over a tablet. "The board has called an emergency meeting for this afternoon." Kyle scanned the email, his jaw tightening with each line. 7 board members had signed a formal request to discuss his recent personal decisions and their impact on company stability and shareholder confidence. "Richard's behind this," Kyle said grimly. "He's been waiting for an opportunity to strike." "There's more," David said reluctantly. "Marcus Tellman has been calling all morning. He claims he has information about Miss Voss that could damage the company's reputation." Kyle's blood ran cold. "What kind of information?" He wouldn't say. "But he's demanding a meeting with you and threatening to go to the media if you refuse." At the villa, Naria was helping the boys with their homework when Kyle arrived home earlier than usual. She took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. "Boys, why don't you go play in the garden?" she said gently. "Daddy and I need to talk." Once they were alone, Kyle explained the situation. "I should have expected this," he said, running his hands through his hair. "The board has been looking for a reason to question my leadership ever since I started prioritizing ethics over profits." "What does Marcus want?" Naraya asked, though she already suspected. "Money, most likely. He's a parasite who feeds on other people's vulnerabilities." Kyle's voice was hard with anger. "But I won't let him hurt you or the boys. What if he has something that could really damage us?" Naraya asked quietly. "What if he knows about that night, about how I was supposed to manipulate you?" "Then we'll deal with it together," Kyle said firmly. "I'm not ashamed of how we met, and I'm not ashamed of our family. If the board wants a fight, they'll get one." The board meeting was scheduled for 3 o'clock in the conference room on the 50th floor of Americ Tower. Kyle arrived to find 12 stern faces arranged around the polished mahogany table. Richard Emmerich sat at the far end, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expensive suit immaculate. "Kyle," Richard said with false warmth, "thank you for joining us." "Let's dispense with the pleasantries," Kyle replied, taking his seat at the head of the table. "You called this meeting. What's your concern?" Board member Patricia Hawthorne cleared her throat. "Kyle, we're concerned about the recent media attention surrounding your personal life. The shareholders are asking questions about your judgment and stability. My personal life has no bearing on my ability to run this company," Kyle said calmly. "If anything, my performance has improved since reuniting with my family. But the circumstances are unusual," added Harold Blackwood, another longtime board member. "A secret family, children you never knew existed, a relationship that began under questionable circumstances." "There's nothing questionable about love," Kyle said evenly. "And there's nothing secret about my family now. I introduced them publicly because I'm proud of them." Richard leaned forward, his eyes cold. "The problem, nephew, is that your romantic entanglements have become a distraction. The company's stock has fluctuated wildly since the tech summit. Some investors are concerned about your priorities." "Our stock is up 12% since the summit," Kyle corrected. "The market responded positively to authenticity and family values." "Short-term gains," Richard dismissed. "But what about long-term stability? What happens when the media discovers more about this woman's background? What happens when they learn she was essentially a gold digger who manipulated you at that charity gala?" The room fell silent. Kyle's hands clenched into fists, but his voice remained steady. "Choose your next words very carefully, Richard." "I'm simply pointing out the optics," Richard continued smoothly. "A desperate woman, a convenient pregnancy, a sudden reappearance when your wealth became public knowledge. It doesn't look good." "You don't know anything about Naraya," Kyle said, his voice dangerous. "And you certainly don't know anything about love or family." The meeting was interrupted by a knock on the door. David entered, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Marcus Tellman is here. He says it's urgent." Kyle's jaw tightened. "Send him in." Marcus entered with his characteristic oily smile, carrying a briefcase that he set deliberately on the table. He was a small man with thinning hair and shifty eyes, the type who thrived on other people's misfortune. "Gentlemen," he said, nodding to the board members, "and Mr. Emmerich, thank you for seeing me." "State your business," Kyle said curtly. "I'm here to discuss Naria Voss," Marcus said, opening his briefcase. "You see, I have extensive documentation of her past activities, her financial desperation, her willingness to use her assets to secure business advantages." "Be very careful what you say next," Kyle warned, but Marcus continued. "I have photographs, emails, witness statements, all proving that she deliberately targeted you at that charity gala. She was following my instructions to seduce you into signing investment papers." Marcus pulled out a folder. "Of course she failed in that mission, but she certainly succeeded in securing a different kind of payday." "You're lying," Kyle said, standing abruptly. "Am I?" Marcus smirked. "I have hotel records showing she used a false name. I have bank statements showing her desperate financial situation. I have everything needed to prove she's a calculating opportunist who saw you as a meal ticket." Richard looked pleased. "This is exactly what we're concerned about, Kyle. You've been manipulated by a woman who's been playing a long game." "She disappeared for 4 years," Kyle said through gritted teeth. "She raised my children in poverty rather than contact me. That's not the behavior of a gold digger. Or it's exactly the behavior of a very smart gold digger," Marcus replied. "Create mystery, raise the stakes, then reappear when the children are old enough to secure maximum sympathy and financial benefit." "What do you want?" Kyle asked, his voice deadly quiet. $5 million, Marcus said without hesitation, "and I'll disappear forever. Refuse, and I'll hold a press conference tomorrow morning. By evening, your precious family will be exposed as frauds, and your company's reputation will be in ruins." The board members exchanged glances. Richard looked triumphant. "Perhaps we should consider—" "No," Kyle said firmly. "I won't pay a single cent." Marcus looked surprised. "Mr. Emmerich, I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation. This information will destroy your family." "The only thing that will be destroyed," Kyle said, pulling out his phone, "is your freedom." He pressed a button, and the conference room door opened. Detective Sarah Morrison entered, followed by 2 uniformed officers. "Marcus Tellman," Detective Morrison said, "you're under arrest for extortion, blackmail, and embezzlement." Marcus's face went white. "This is a setup. You can't prove anything." "Actually, we can," Detective Morrison said, nodding to KL. "Mr. Emmerich contacted us yesterday. This entire conversation has been recorded with our full knowledge and cooperation." "You see, Marcus," Kyle said, his voice calm but deadly, "I've been investigating you for the past month. Ever since Naria told me about your coercive tactics, I've been building a case. Turns out, you've been embezzling from clients for years, using your position to manipulate vulnerable women, falsifying documents. The list goes on." "You have no proof," Marcus sputtered as the officers handcuffed him. "I have your computer files," Kyle said, "your bank records, testimony from 6 other women you victimized, your own emails detailing your schemes. You're going to prison, Marcus, for a very long time." As Marcus was led away, still protesting his innocence, Kyle turned to face the board. Richard's triumphant expression had vanished, replaced by barely concealed fury. "Well," Kyle said, straightening his tie, "I believe this meeting is over." "Not quite," Richard said coldly. "The board still has concerns about your judgment." "Then perhaps the board should find a new company to concern itself with," Kyle replied, "because I'm done entertaining your petty power plays." Patricia Hawthorne shifted uncomfortably. "Kyle, we're not your enemies. We're just trying to protect the company." "The company doesn't need protection from love," Kyle said. "It needs protection from people who value profit over principles, who see families as liabilities, who think fear is a better motivator than inspiration." He looked directly at Richard. "You removed the note I left for Naria 4 years ago. You saw a chance to eliminate what you considered a threat to your ambitions, and you took it. You cost us 4 years together, and you cost these children 4 years with their father." Richard's face remained impassive. "I did what I thought was best for the company. You did what you thought was best for yourself," Kyle corrected. "But your day of reckoning is coming. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in your board position." "You can't do that," Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I can, and I will," Kyle said. "Unless you resign immediately." The next hour was a blur of legal maneuvering and corporate politics. When the dust settled, Richard had resigned from the board, taking 3 allies with him. The remaining board members voted unanimously to support Kyle's leadership and his personal decisions. That evening, Kyle returned to the villa to find Naraya waiting for him in the garden. She'd seen the news reports about Marcus's arrest, but she needed to hear the full story from him. "It's over," Kyle said, pulling her into his arms. "Marcus is in custody, Richard is gone, and the board is solidly behind us. What about his threats?" Naraya asked. "The things he said about me? Lies," Kyle said firmly. "And even if they weren't, even if you had been trying to manipulate me that night, it wouldn't change how I feel about you now. It wouldn't change the fact that you're an incredible mother, an amazing woman, and the love of my life. I never wanted to hurt you," Naraya said quietly. "That night at the gala, I was supposed to charm you into signing Marcus's papers. But the moment I saw you, the moment we talked, I forgot all about his scheme. I fell in love with you, Kale. Really, truly fell in love." "I know," Kyle said, kissing her forehead. "I could see it in your eyes then, and I can see it now. You're incapable of deception, Naraya. It's one of the things I love most about you." "Where are the boys?" she asked. "Inside, probably eavesdropping," Kyle said with a smile. "They're worried about you." As if on cue, 3 small faces appeared at the French doors. Cassian, Kaio, and Caleb tumbled outside, rushing to embrace their parents. "Is everything okay?" Cassian asked seriously. "We heard about that mean man on the news." "Everything's perfect," Kyle assured them. "And tomorrow, we're going to start something new, something that will help other families like ours." "What kind of something?" Kaio asked curiously. "A foundation," Kyle explained. "We're going to call it the 3 Stars Trust, after you 3. It will help single parents, support children's education, and provide resources for families in need." "Like Mommy needed when we were little?" Caleb asked. "Exactly like that," Kyle said. "We're going to make sure no mother has to struggle alone the way Mommy did." "Can we help?" Cassian asked eagerly. "You already are helping," Naraya said, gathering them close. "You're showing the world that families come in all shapes and sizes, that love is stronger than fear, and that sometimes the best things in life are worth waiting for." As they sat together in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose, Kale felt a profound sense of peace. The battles were over. The threats were gone. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility. "I love you," he told Naraya, his voice filled with wonder. "I love all of you." "We love you too," she replied, and the boys echoed her words in their sweet young voices. They were finally, truly, completely home. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with Marcus and the board. The 3 Stars Trust was thriving, having already provided assistance to over 300 families across the country. Naraya had thrown herself into the foundation's work, finding purpose in helping other single mothers navigate the challenges she had once faced alone. The boys had settled beautifully into their new life. Cassian excelled in advanced mathematics classes, Kaio had invented a water-saving device for the school garden, and Caleb had started a reading program for younger children. They were happy, confident, and deeply loved. But Kyle had been acting strangely lately. He disappeared from mysterious meetings, made hushed phone calls, and seemed to be planning something elaborate. Naraya caught him several times, huddled in deep conversation with the boys, all of them falling silent when she entered the room. "What are you 3 plotting?" she asked one evening, finding them gathered around Kyle's laptop in his study. "Nothing, Mommy," Caleb said with barely contained excitement. "Just boy stuff." "Boy stuff that involves formal wear measurements?" she asked, noting the tailor's website on the screen. "Maybe," Cassian said with a grin that was pure mischief. Kyle closed the laptop and stood, pulling Naraya into his arms. "Just trust us. We're planning something special." "Should I be worried?" she asked, though she was smiling. "Only if you're worried about being happy," Kaio said solemnly, which made his brothers giggle. The something special revealed itself on a rainy Saturday evening in November, exactly 1 year after their reunion at the Tech Academy. Kyle had arranged for Mrs. Chen to visit for the weekend, ostensibly to help the boys with a school project. "I need to show you something," Kyle said to Naraya after dinner. "It's important." "What kind of important?" she asked, but he was already helping her into her coat. "The kind that changes everything," he said mysteriously. They drove through the city as rain streaked the windows, the lights creating rivers of gold and silver on the glass. Naraya recognized the route. They were heading toward the Grandview Hotel, the place where their story had begun. Kale, what are we doing here? She asked as the valet took their car. Remembering, he said simply, taking her hand. The hotel lobby was elegant as ever, but it felt different now. Where once she had felt like an intruder, now she belonged. Kyle led her to the elevator, pressing the button for the penthouse floor. The same suite? She asked, her voice soft with memory. The same suite, he confirmed. I've kept it reserved every anniversary of that night, hoping someday I'd bring you back here. The suite had been transformed. Candles flickered on every surface, casting dancing shadows on the walls. White roses, hundreds of them, filled crystal vases throughout the room. But what took Naraya's breath away was the photo gallery displayed on easels around the living area. Pictures of their family filled the space, the boys as babies, their first steps, first days of school, moments of joy and growth that Kale had missed but now cherished through her careful documentation. But scattered among them were new photos, recent images of their life together, their family complete at last. This is beautiful, Naraya whispered, touching one photo of all 5 of them laughing during a picnic in the garden. But why? She turned around and gasped. Standing in the doorway were 3 small figures in matching black tuxedos. Cassian, Kaio, and Caleb looked incredibly handsome and impossibly grown up, their hair perfectly styled, their faces glowing with excitement. What are you doing here? She asked, laughing through sudden tears. I thought you were working on a project with Mrs. Chen. We are working on a project, Caleb said solemnly. The most important project ever. Operation Make Mommy Cry Happy Tears, Kaio added, which made Cassian elbow him. You weren't supposed to tell her the code name, Cassian hissed. Kyle moved to stand behind the boys, his hands resting gently on their shoulders. Naraya, 4 years ago in this room, I fell in love with a woman who changed my entire world. I thought I'd lost her forever, but fate had other plans. Daddy practiced this speech 100 times, Caleb whispered loudly, earning giggles from his brothers. Shh, Cassian said. This is the romantic part. Kyle smiled at their antics but continued. That woman gave me the greatest gift imaginable, not just her love, but 3 incredible children who make every day an adventure. She took what should have been my greatest regret and turned it into my greatest joy. Naraya's hands flew to her mouth as understanding dawned. The boys stepped forward in perfect synchronization, Cassian carrying a small velvet box. Naraya, Kyle said, dropping to one knee as the boys flanked him like tiny guards of honor. I should have done this 4 years ago in this very room. I should have asked you then to be my partner, my love, my everything. But we weren't born yet, Kyle pointed out helpfully. So it's better this way. Much better, Kyle agreed, his eyes never leaving Naraya's face. Because now I'm not just asking you to marry me, I'm asking you to make our family official, to take my name, to wear my ring, to be my wife and the mother of our children in the eyes of the world. Cassian handed him the velvet box with ceremonial importance. Inside was a ring that took Naraya's breath away, a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds, designed to complement the promise ring she still wore on a chain around her neck. Naraya Voss, Kyle said, his voice thick with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you loved me? Say yes, Mommy, Caleb urged. We already picked out our wedding outfits. And we know where we want to live, Kaio added. Here with you and Daddy. And we want you to be happy forever, Cassian said, his young face serious with the weight of his words. Naraya looked at this man who had searched for her across years and miles, who had embraced her children as his own, who had fought battles for their family and won. She looked at her 3 boys, dressed like little princes, their faces glowing with hope and love. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The boys erupted in cheers as Kyle slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her as their children danced around them with pure joy. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love all of you. We love you too, Daddy, the boys chorused, wrapping their arms around their parents' legs. Now can we have cake? Caleb asked. Mrs. Chen made a special one for the engagement party. Engagement party? Naraya laughed. How long have you been planning this? Months, Cassian admitted proudly. Daddy wanted everything to be perfect. And we helped, Kaio added. We picked the flowers and the music and the menu for the wedding. The wedding? Naraya asked, raising an eyebrow at Kale. They're very thorough planners, he said sheepishly. But we can change anything you don't like. Can we see the plans? She asked. What followed was the most elaborate presentation she'd ever witnessed from 4-year-olds. The boys had helped KL plan every detail, from the location, the villa's garden, to the decorations white and blue, their family colors, to the guest lists small and intimate, just their closest friends and chosen family. Mrs. Chen is making the cake, Caleb announced. 3 layers, 1 for each of us. Dr. Patterson is going to walk you down the aisle, Cassian added, since he delivered us and took care of you when you were pregnant. And we get to carry the rings, Kaio said proudly. All 3 of us together. You thought of everything, Naria said, overwhelmed by the care and love that had gone into these plans. Almost everything, Kyle said. There's one more surprise. He led them to the suite's terrace, where the city sparkled below them like scattered stars. A string quartet was setting up in the corner, and a beautifully set table for 5 awaited them. Our first meal as an engaged family, Kyle explained. I thought we should celebrate properly. The evening was magical. They dined on Naraya's favorite foods while the boys regaled them with stories of their secret planning sessions. The quartet played softly in the background, adding to the atmosphere of romance and joy. As the night grew late, the boys began to yawn despite their excitement. Can we sleep here tonight? Caleb asked. Like a family sleepover? Of course, Kyle said. I had them prepare the guest suite with 3 beds. But we want to sleep together, Cassian said. All 3 of us in one big bed, like we used to. Some traditions are worth keeping, Naraya agreed, kissing their foreheads. The wedding took place 6 weeks later on a perfect winter morning. The villa's garden had been transformed into a wonderland of white flowers and twinkling lights. Despite the boys' desire for a large celebration, Naria and Kyle had kept the guest list intimate. Mrs. Chen, Dr. Patterson, David and his family, a few close friends from the foundation, and the board members who had supported them. Naraya stood in the bridal suite, staring at herself in the mirror. The dress was a masterpiece, ivory silk with delicate beading that caught the light with every movement. It was elegant but not ostentatious, beautiful but comfortable enough to move freely. You look like a fairy tale princess, Mrs. Chen said, adjusting her veil. But better, because this is real. Sometimes I can't believe it's real, Naraya admitted. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find it was all a dream. The best dreams are the ones that come true, Dr. Patterson said from the doorway. He was dressed in his best suit, looking distinguished and proud. Are you ready to become Mrs. Emmerich? I've been ready for 4 years, Naraya said. I just didn't know it. The ceremony was held in the garden, with an archway of white roses framing the altar. As the string quartet began the processional, the boys appeared first, walking in perfect formation down the aisle. They carried the rings on small pillows, their faces serious with the importance of their task. Then came Naraya on Dr. Patterson's arm, and every guest rose to their feet. She was radiant, glowing with happiness and love. But her eyes were only for Kyle, who stood at the altar with tears streaming down his face. The boys took their places as ring bearers and mini groomsmen, standing proudly beside their father. When Dr. Patterson placed Naraya's hand in Kyle's, all 5 of them formed a perfect circle of love. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, we are gathered here today to witness the union of 2 souls who have found their way back to each other, and to celebrate the family they have created together. The ceremony was beautiful but brief. When Kyle and Naraya exchanged vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other and their children, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. You may kiss your bride, the officiant announced. As Kyle and Naraya shared their first kiss as husband and wife, the boys cheered loudly, and the guests erupted in applause. Rose petals fell from the sky, the boys' idea, creating a shower of beauty and joy. Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant called over the celebration, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Kyle Emmerich and their 3 sons, Cassian, Kaio, and Caleb. As they walked back down the aisle together, the boys holding Naraya's train, she felt like she was floating. This was her family, her destiny, her happily ever after. The reception was held on the villa's terrace, with dancing and laughter that lasted well into the evening. The boys were the center of attention, charming guests with their intelligence and humor. But as the night wound down, they found themselves back in the garden where it all began. Are you happy, Mommy? Caleb asked, climbing into her lap. Happier than I ever dreamed possible, she replied, kissing his forehead. Good, Cassian said seriously. Because you deserve to be happy forever. We all do, Kaio added, snuggling against her side. Kyle pulled them all close, his family complete at last. Forever and always, he promised. All of us, together. As they sat under the stars, surrounded by the remnants of their perfect day, Naraya marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From that first night of passion to this moment of perfect peace, every step had been worth it. She was no longer the scared, lonely woman who had run away with 3 babies. She was a queen who had found her kingdom, a mother who had given her children the father they deserved, a woman who had learned that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that take time to write themselves. And so ends the story of Naraya and Kyle, a love that conquered time, distance, and every obstacle in its path. Their journey proves that sometimes the most beautiful endings are really just the beginning of something even more wonderful. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of love to overcome anything, please subscribe to Love and Twilights for more stories of passion, perseverance, and perfect endings. Because everyone deserves a love story that proves happily ever after is not just a fairy tale, it's a promise waiting to be kept.